The PC hardware market appears to be going through somewhat of a crash. Prices on various components are dropping, and there seems to be some really good deals from retailers that I've seen, which I think people should capitalize on. I wanted to take a look at some of those deals and price drops, as well as talk a bit as to why this is happening and if PC gamers care or should care. Let's discuss that in this video. Hey, if you enjoy content like this, drop a like, make sure to subscribe, and smash that bell so you never miss another video. Hey, what is going on guys? Danny here, welcome back to the channel and I hope you've all been doing well. The PC hardware market right now is in a really interesting but also strange place. The reason why I say that is because in some ways it feels like it's never been a better time to go out to buy parts if you're interested in building a PC. On the other hand, it also seems like it may be one of the worst times to get into the PC hardware market. Most of the noise, drama, or outcry you've probably been hearing has been coming from the GPU market, and that's also because the GPU is one of the most, if not the most important component in your system. As generally most games are GPU bound, it's what ultimately decides how your system is going to be performing, what kind of frame rates you'll be getting, and how it will perform at certain resolutions. Along with that, people tend to upgrade their GPUs before they end up doing a whole new rebuild or overhaul of their system. For example, in my personal system, I had been using an RTX 2080 for about 3.5 years. I would have actually been using a 1080 Ti for nearly 6 years, but had to RMA it, but up until recently is where I decided I wanted to ensure I could get top-notch performance at 1440p and upgraded to a 3090. I also did need the extra VRAM for some of the other apps I use, but the point is, I didn't actually end up making any other changes to my build, I just upgraded my GPU. Though now we're seeing that people aren't going through those typical upgrade cycles and are actually holding on to their older GPUs. This has been simply due to the fact at how atrocious the new GPU market has become, regardless of whether it's AMD or Nvidia. When it came to the RTX 40 series, only the 4090 was amongst them that actually deserves its title. Just from looking at benchmarks, it's blatantly obvious that the rest of the stack has been shifted one tier up and are overpriced, severely overpriced. This isn't a simple case of inflation where everything has gone up by $100 or a couple $100. You're being sold an RTX 4070 for $800. You're being sold an RTX 4050 Ti for $400. The RTX 4060 Ti wasn't even faster than its predecessor, and in some games even lost due to its similar memory bus. The hardware you get for the money has also been stripped down. It's shrinkflation. People saw that and went, screw that, there's no chance I'm going to be upgrading or giving Nvidia my money. The same happened with AMD. They decided to rename lower tiered cards to a higher tier just so they could get more money from consumers. They're following Nvidia's lead and chasing the highest margins possible. That should give you guys a bit of a recap and background on what's been going on there, but if you want to know more, I've got plenty of videos covering the separate GPU launches over the past few months. What I wanted to talk about next was this article that was posted over on Tom's Hardware, where they talk about the desktop GPU sales being the lowest in decades. The information and data they're sourcing comes from John Petty Research, who have been covering the GPU and PC hardware market with plenty of reports for quite some time. The first graph they show us has to do with the shipment of GPUs stretching for nearly a decade, and we can see how these past few quarters have been some of the worst we've seen for this market, especially for AMD. One of the other things I wanted to highlight to you guys is that this time period from Q3 2020 up until Q1 2022 was the time where crypto mining was at the highest it had ever been. This wasn't necessarily a period where consumers or regular PC gamers were buying a lot of GPUs. Yes, the lockdowns did play a role where people who were cooped up inside their homes wanted to build PCs to play games or use it for work, though the vast majority of those uplifts came from manufacturers selling to miners and appeasing the demand in that segment. That's reflected in the chart because after Q1 of 2022, there was a steep decline, and that was due to mining dying out. Gamers not wanting to buy inflated old parts, they were waiting for next-gen parts, and also many who were in need of GPUs had already bought something and were like, you know what, I think I'm set for a while now. There was a small blip in the last quarter of 2022, and that was only because there was some hype generated in the GPU market due to the new releases like the 4090 and 7900 series. But it wasn't anything crazy, definitely not like the insane hype we saw when Nvidia launched the GTX 1080 Ti and slashed prices on the 1080. but overall the last couple of quarters for both companies has been pretty terrible. On the bright side, Intel has been gaining some ground on AMD, and I was happy to see that because AMD has been sitting complacent when they shouldn't be, so I hope Intel comes in and just takes market share from them. Now, of course, when you start from rock bottom, the only direction for you to go is up, so it's not surprising to see Intel improving. You can see how the market has reacted to the abysmal lineup of graphics cards we have, and it's going to continue like this unless there are some severe price drops or if these manufacturers release a refresh with corrected pricing, though I'm doubtful something like that will even happen. In this article, they also mention shipment of new AIBs were impacted by a turndown in the PC market due to inflation worries and layoffs, and people buying last-gen boards as suppliers sought to reduce inventory levels. 100% true, especially the part about people buying last gen or used stuff. Since mining died, the used market has been flooded by X-mining GPUs, and also there's been many good clearance deals and price drops on last gen stuff. I recently made a video where I discussed deals you can find on the used market and from major retailers who are clearing out previous gen parts, and this was for various segments: entry-level, mainstream, mid-range, and if you forget about the new GPU releases, then there's actually some fantastic deals out there that will be able to fulfill the performance target you want. Prices on last-gen parts have gone down quite a bit, which has definitely played a huge role into why people don't want to buy new generation parts. You can attain that same level of performance for considerably cheaper now. If you're shopping for a graphics card, I highly recommend checking that video out. Circling back to the concerns of the economic climate, that is also a very valid point to bring up. You can also argue that, we're currently in a recession or we're on the cusp of one, but one thing is true, and that is right now overall buyer confidence is lower and people are being much more frugal with their money. They're not sure if they'll have money to pay for next month's rent or enough for all their groceries, so worrying about new GPUs or PC hardware is the last thing on their list, if at all. This creates a snowball-like effect where since GPU demand is down and people aren't building PCs or looking for alternatives, this creates lower demand for other components too. If we look at the DRAM market, due to an oversupply, prices have just plummeted. Another thing that was highlighted was how the cost of 8GB of G6 memory is just $27. Yet Nvidia and AMD want to sell you $400 graphics cards that have a mere 8GB memory buffer. $400 should easily get you 16GB in the middle of 2023. It simply just comes down to greed and profit. There is no other reason behind it. But if we're to shift away from the GPU market and take a look at memory modules, you can see just how cheap RAM has become these days. Take a look at DDR5 memory module pricing. Last year when Ryzen 7000 came out, one of the main reasons why I couldn't recommend it was because compared to DDR4, pricing on DDR5 was ridiculously high. A 32GB kit of MDI memory, we're talking about 6,000 mega transfers, CL36 was like $250 to $300, if not more. Guess what? Those same kits are now retailing for around $100. After just 10 months, DDR5 pricing has dropped by like 3 times. Are you someone who might be interested in playing around with faster ADI memory on your new 13900K or 13700K? Well, now you can buy a 32GB 7200 mega transfers kit for around $140 to $150. A kit like this in the third quarter of 2022 would have easily been like $500 plus. It's also not just memory DIMMs or GPUs where DRAM is utilized, but we've also got embedded systems, phones, laptops, TVs, SSDs even use DRAM, and demand for all those parts have dropped down too. Since we're on the subject, have you guys checked the pricing on SSDs? You can buy 1TB NVMe drives for around $35. That's cheaper than what 1TB traditional hard drives are going for. I knew the day would come where in terms of gigabyte per dollar, SSDs would reach parity with old spinners, but we're coming in cheaper, so that's actually quite astounding. So from a PC gaming perspective, it actually makes no sense to buy hard drives anymore. Though for mass storage, especially when we get to that 10TB plus realm, hard drives still make more sense, they'll always still have a place. What about CPUs? That is another major component that contributes to the overall performance of your system, especially if you're someone who's a high refresh gamer, and the good news is that prices on them have also been falling. Let's start with AMD first, and if you've been following my channel for a while now, you'll know that I was quite harsh on the 7000 series when they were first announced, because most of the SKUs besides the 7950X at that time were in my opinion just too much, and the pricing on their motherboards, and as mentioned, the earlier DDR5 pricing, just didn't make them feasible over AM4. And in terms of performance, they weren't a huge leap over Zen 3 unless you were gaming with a 4090 at 1080p low settings. But if you look at AMD parts now, with the addition of non-X parts and the X3D SKUs, the Ryzen 7000 family is in a much better spot. I would say the parts are at price points they should have launched at in the first place. They're in a spot now that I'd say if you're in a market for a new AMD build, then going AM5 actually makes more sense. Now, if you're on AM4 and you're on an older Ryzen CPU like a 2700X, you've got options for a good upgrade path. The 5000 series and Zen 3 is still very capable, plenty of great deals on those parts. Two options which stand out to me are the 5950X and 5800X3D. If you're after a really good workstation multi-core CPU, the 5950X is a pretty decent upgrade. And if you're after good gaming performance, then the 5800X3D has been dropped down to $290, and I believe it offers really good value there. It's able to compete with some of the best gaming processors on the market from the latest gen, like Intel's 13th gen, and AMD's even, their X3D parts from the 7000 series. On Intel's side, things are also looking really good. Just the other day, Intel's i7-12700KF was on sale on Newegg for just $240. You get really good multi-core performance, and when paired with good memory, it competes with some of the best gaming processors on the market. Also, while DDR5 pricing isn't really an issue, the advantage of being able to use DDR4 is that you might already have a kit laying around and you can just bring that forward, so you can save a lot of money there. There are also some really good deals on lower end segment parts like the 12400F, 13400F, and even the higher end stuff like the 13900K, which has dropped down quite a bit from launch, making it very competitive against the 7950X and 7950X3D. I was on PC Part Picker and I was playing around with various combinations and found out you can configure some really good builds that aren't exorbitantly priced. We went over a build not too long ago for someone who might be on a bit of a tighter budget and wanted to keep things under $1,000. I also made this build using the pricing we had of that 12700KF deal, and for around $1,350 you can build a system that will last you for many years to come. You'll get fantastic gaming performance as well as be able to use it for workstation purposes. A build like this a year ago would have cost you double if not even more. The point is that if we're to ignore new GPUs, then the PC hardware market has become very cheap and accessible, which is why I said that it may also be the best time for you to enter the market and build yourself a gaming PC. Despite prices being so attractive for hardware, demand is still down, and we've already talked about how people are using their money for more important things like saving in general and how they might be writing things out with their current hardware or some other alternative. But I think something else that's also really important and what really drives people towards hardware is the software. Just take a look at this trend. A lot of acceptable new games that have come out are just remasters or remakes. The recent ports that have come over to PC haven't been great. And it's not just technical issues, but the games themselves have to be really good. Forspoken was a garbage game, Redfall was garbage, Halo Infinite didn't live up to the hype, and there just haven't been any good games coming out, and so therefore people are saying they're just going to stick with playing older stuff, and that's good for them because then you won't have to upgrade or worry about performance issues. There are also some really good alternatives on other platforms. I've seen countless comments from people saying how they've been having a blast playing games on their PS5, people saying I've sold my old gaming PC and just bought a PS5 and have been playing PS5 exclusives. Me personally, all I've been playing is Tears of the Kingdom this past month, and I didn't even bother with emulation. I have my Switch overclocked, and it's been able to play Tears of the Kingdom at a steady 30 FPS. Sure, it might not look nearly as good and feel as good as it could be on a PC, but honestly, I don't care because the game itself is a hell of a lot of fun, and that's what matters to me at the end of the day. But just imagine if there was an official port of Tears of the Kingdom or another game that was just as good and highly rated, then you'd have a major driving force to entice people into upgrading or building a new PC. I'm sorry, but adding path tracing to a mediocre game isn't the solution. At the end of the day, it ends up coming down to the user's situation. You can either look at this as an awesome time to become a PC gamer, or it could be the worst time. You decide what you want to play and do with your hardware to create the experience you want. If you're happy with your current hardware, then great, you get to save money and you can use it towards something else more important in your life right now. If you think that perhaps it's a great time to try out that extensive backlog of PC games, well, you've got plenty of great hardware at fantastic price points. But that's going to do it for me, guys. We'll touch base in the next video. If you guys found this video to be informative and entertaining, then leave a like. Let me know your thoughts and comments down below. Be sure to check out the video description for cool links and ways to support the channel, such as using my Amazon affiliate link. And if you're interested in seeing more content like this, then consider subscribing, I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.